Welcome to Projecting No, I'm kidding. Kidding. I have to start over. I got confused
It's okay.
because when I see you, I think.
It's okay.
Welcome to Form, a counseling podcast. I'm your host, Devin Leach, and I am excited today to talk to my good friend and also podcast host, Kyle Sanders. Kyle, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Kyle is, as I said, a podcast host of the podcast Projecting Perspectives, which is a podcast about discerning movies and film from a biblical worldview. And so I think it's fair, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, I think it's fair to say that your podcast is about discernment and about helping people sort of critically think about the things that they're consuming, right?
That's a great way to describe it.
So for my audience, this is called Form, a counseling podcast. They may be wondering, well, other than him being your friend, why are you interviewing him today? And there's a multiple kind of set answer to why I'm talking to Kyle today. First of all, he's a good podcaster and he's easy to talk to. He's also wise. He's a believer, and so he has a lot to offer in terms of theological thinking and biblical worldview. But also, for my audience, I want to make it a point to help every one of us understand the principle that if we really take Scripture seriously, what we're saying is that everything we do matters. And that includes the entertainment we take in. And that includes the movies we watch and the TV we watch and the entertainment in all of its forms that we consume. There's no part of our life that's sort of compartmentalized outside of Christ. And so as we think through that, I remember an instance where I had a professor that in seminary told all of us wannabe pastors to go home and watch American Idol. American Idol had just started. It wasn't very old. It was a few years old at that point. And he says to all of us, you go home and watch American Idol. And he said the reason for that is because he wanted all of us to see the culture that was influencing our people. And I thought that was a very interesting thing to say to a bunch of preachers who were, very excited about reading theology books, and most of them very proud of the fact that they didn't watch TV or whatever. So the concept of this guy poking his head through and going, no, I want you to intentionally go home and see what are the influences of the people that you're seeking to pastor. That was an interesting thing to say. That's not, of course, in neglect of all the things like we were supposed to be doing, like the word and study and prayer. But it was in addition to those things in order to try to understand our audiences and the people that we're seeking to shepherd. And so that became the first thing that made me start to realize how much influences affect our daily life. And so if I'm thinking in terms of in this podcast of making this a resource to help people, then I'm thinking about what influences in people's lives are directing them. And at that point, that's where you come in, right? There's no better way to help flesh that out than to think through how are we watching movies and TV and film and the books we read and the music we listen to. How are those things influencing our souls, our worldviews, and how are they directing us? I think the concept of that is then at that point pretty obvious, right? The way that we seek out influence and what we allow to influence us deeply matters to our mental health, to our spiritual health, and to our just overall condition. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the main reasons I wanted you to come on and talk about what you're doing on your podcast, and also about theology and film and art and all those things kind of put together. And so I appreciate you being here today, and I'm looking forward to our conversation because I think that this is useful in people's personal lives.
Of course. I think of you're talking about American Idol, early on American Idol. Everybody watched it. Not everybody, but a lot of people watched American Idol early on. And so, being a people who want to engage culture and want to engage the people, especially for you, probably early on going into ministry, you want to be able to know what are people engaging with and what are they watching. That was it. People were watching American Idol, and so that was something to talk to them about. It was a talking point,
Big
even
time.
just around the culture and the world, like being able to say, hey, I'm going to take a step back. Even people outside the church were talking about it enough to where you were like, hey, this is a good talking point to even just get an introduction to be able to have good conversations with people. That's how I feel about movies in a lot of ways. Movies are everybody. A lot of people go to the movies enough to where you have people that you can engage with and go, man, that's a good conversation intro piece that I can use to just say, hey, did you see this movie that just came out? I think back to like, especially when Marvel was really big.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think back to like Infinity War, Endgame, like the big years of Marvel. Like
Right.
you knew when people were going to see those movies, like, hey, did you go see that? Like people were talking about that.
They're
So
cultural phenomenons.
yeah,
Yeah.
everybody was talking about it enough to where you could go, let's have a conversation. And those were good intro pieces to engage with people outside the church, but also people in the church were going to see him enough to where you'd have also other conversations with people in the church enough to go, hey, what did you think about this scene? What did you think about what this character did? So they're really good conversation pieces.
Such a good point. They really are. The concept of um, believers wanting to share the gospel and
Mm-hmm.
how they can utilize all those different avenues to have those conversations. You and I have had many of those conversations regarding movies and film. Really, that was one of the first things we connected over. That, but even before your podcast, was
Right.
the to talking through the meaning of what we had just watched, whether it was a movie or a show. Um, we have on your podcast, projecting perspectives, has went through lots of different movies and analyzed them and kind of sorted through them. And one of those movies was The King's Speech, and The King's Speech, which is highly recommended, is an excellent film revolving around King George VI, who had a stuttering problem and who needed a person to help him with speech therapy in order to be able to deliver a wartime speech during the brink of what became, was it World War II? I think
I
it
believe
was
so. Yeah.
World War One or World War II. I don't remember which one. I think it was World War II. And so it centers around his relationship with the speech therapist, and it's phenomenal. And in preaching and teaching training that we put on for local pastors at our church, in teaching them how to handle the Bible, I use the scene from the King's Speech, because in studying the Bible, we want to be careful to have the right context and also use the right tone, and also understand the kind of the meat of the passage. And when you watch film and you understand narrative and story, which we'll get into in just a minute, it actually helps you teach the Bible better, because the Bible is written in narrative. And so there's a scene where the king is sitting on one end of the couch, and he's like on, and the couch is really long and the room is really big, and he looks very, very tiny as the king of the country who is actually leading the, you know, the world, some would say, into war, a necessary war. Um, he was sitting on this couch, not able to talk, and he's feeling very, very small. And in the scene, he looks very, very small. It's such a powerful imagery, because the wall is kind of chaos with all the paint, and the couch has a big pattern, and so there's like, it's like swallowing him. The scene is, and I always point that scene out to pastors and saying, like, look at the way they framed this. And so as we're reading scripture, we look for those framings of what the way that the author wrote to help us understand the layout of something. And so I see a direct mirror, and I want you to speak to this, a direct mirror from the way that we watch movies and film to the way that we interpret scripture when we're reading it, because it's not just an encyclopedia that you're supposed to flip through and find the thing you're interested in. It's written as a narrative. It's written as a story. It's supposed to be taken in that way, and so there's a direct connection between those two things. Talk about that for just a minute.
Yeah, I mean, first off, we love stories.
Yeah.
I think as Christians, we love reading stories, and when we pick up a Bible, it's full of stories. And so when you go and you read the different stories throughout the Bible, and you read those narratives, you break them down. And as you're breaking those down, I'm not a pastor, so I go and I read through my Bible. I was taught to do this by a pastor, right? Go and you break down the passage, and you're thinking through the passage. What can I get out of this passage? Well, that's what I go and I do when I watch movies. I'm breaking down the movie scene by scene, just like you did with that scene, that one little scene in the King's Speech. You break down the scene and you go, what is going on in this scene? And that's what we do throughout my podcast. But as the story goes on, not every scene in a movie is going to matter necessarily to where you're going to go, well, I got something out of that scene. But the movies, as a whole, you can walk away from a movie and go, man, I got something out of that to go. Got something to think on there. Now with the Bible, it's totally different. It's all building. It's a meta narrative, right? It's all building to that story, the King Jesus. It's all building to Jesus, and it's all building up to that. It's a giant meta narrative, right? And so that's the beauty of the Bible, and so when I'm watching a movie, I'm breaking down the scenes, but I'm also looking for, what is this trying to tell me about what the world believes? Because most of the movies that are made are not made by Christians. That's a fact. 99% of the movies made in Hollywood are probably not going to be made by Christians, probably higher than that. And so I've got to go into them knowing, hey, a Christian didn't make this film, and there's probably a deeper meaning here that they're trying to say to a world that doesn't believe in what I believe in, but I can still pull something from this.
How helpful do you think it is to identify that, what the message is that's being sent to you? How helpful is that in keeping it from steering you?
Well, I think, at least for me, it goes back to, if I'm trying to do, my goal in life is I do everything to the glory of God, right? So I have to say that I can't go sit on the couch and go, well, this 2.5 hour movie, yeah, I just got to shut my brain off. Can't do this to the glory of God. I still got to do that to the glory of God, right?
Yeah.
And so when I'm sitting there watching the movie, that message, whatever it's trying to steer me towards, it could be the wrong message. It could be a message contrary to what I believe. There are a lot of movies that do that, right? I think we covered the movie Hercules. Hercules, fun movie.
Disney movie, great
Disney
songs.
movie,
Yeah.
great songs. But it has a
Terrible
terrible message.
Yeah.
We talked about that. It has
Yeah.
a terrible message about who God is. And we talked about what that looks like. And so you have to be able to tell what the message is, and be able to walk away from the movie and go, man, that was a fun movie, but terrible message.
Mhm.
And being able to have that mindset of, hey, I'm doing everything to the glory of God, and you've got to know your Bible. You've got to know what you believe when you're going into those settings and watching those movies, because if you don't know what you believe, then there is that chance you can be steered in the wrong direction.
That's so true. There's a connection somewhere in here between the way that a movie plays out and the narrative of that movie and the narrative of our lives and the narrative of Scripture. You agree, we're story people.
Mm-hmm.
We are story people. As a matter of fact, I've went as far in my own practice as to say to people that even a decision, a singular decision, is a miniature story. Right? It's a blip on the timeline, but it's a miniature story. Everything's set on a timeline in a narrative fashion. We only know what was, what is, and then what's going to be. We're never outside of time looking at it all at once, which means that we experience everything in a narrative way. So when I make a decision, it's because I've gathered information, hopefully, and have had the process of thinking and then come to a decision and then delivered that decision and then experienced the consequences of that. And that's a narrative, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very much story people. And what's so interesting about this, there's a question in here. Be patient with me. What's so interesting about this to me is that in so many different programs that I've been a part of that are seeking to help people, different kind of therapy programs or different biblical counseling programs, there's an aspect to them that has a timeline, and you have to fill out that timeline. There's been addiction groups have been part of that have a timeline. There's been grief groups have been a part of that have a timeline. So many of them. You have to map out what happened, because often people find their problems where it's diverged from a narrative that's cohesive that they can live with and understand. And often the problem that someone has a hard time getting over is where it left the station, so to speak, or where they started going a different unhealthy direction, is the place where they couldn't fit the thing that happened into the story, so to speak. So as we think about narratives in film and in books and even in song to some degree, like there's songs that really like tell a story, right? And we think about narrative. What do you think it is about us that is so connected to story?
I mean, like you said, we're story people. So I think that is a crucial piece to that. And I think as I think through that, like we exist in time. We're story people, and we love to watch these stories play out. And some of these stories, depending on what you're watching, can be stories that could have been true, and some of them are stories that aren't true that we just love to watch and see how they play out.
Absolutely, but now you just said something. The stories that don't play out the way we want them to, or maybe aren't true,
Yeah.
equal in equal importance. You think? Are they still teaching something that's equally important or directing our souls in a way?
I think so, because we watch Disney movies, Disney animated movies. They're not true in a lot of ways, right?
Right.
We go and we watch Beauty and the Beast and Pinocchio and different movies like this that are animated movies. These are two that we discussed on the podcast together, and they're not true, but old Disney animated movies used to tell such good lessons.
Yeah.
And have such good themes to where you would walk away and go, ooh, those had some really good thoughts within the movie, to where I can walk away and go, man, that was something I hadn't thought about before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's still a lesson to learn there. There's still something, still a teaching moment for you to go, I can learn something from that, and I can walk away and go, was that right or was that wrong? Disney is not the only one that does that. I mean, there are a lot of
course. Right.
movies that do that outside of Disney, right? There's, I think of a lot of books that are made into movies that do that, that aren't necessarily true, that I've covered on the podcast, or that I want to cover at some point, that just teach a lesson at some point, and you think, okay, what can I take away from this? I know this is never going to happen, or I know this is set in an alternate world that's not a. This isn't even set on Earth in some ways.
Right, yeah.
But I can still watch this movie and go, what's happening here? Who are these characters? What are they doing in this movie that's right or wrong? And what can I take away from this?
So you didn't know I was going to ask you this question, so you might have to think on this and then to answer it at the end. But can you think of a movie or film or a story outside of Scripture that has taught you something that has impacted the way you lived? Or that's made you feel something so deeply it's actually changed your perspective on something?
That's a good question. I'm going to use this example. It's not something that, I mean, it's a recent example just because I've watched the movie recently.
Okay.
And we've covered it. Train Dreams. There's one scene in the movie where there's a character named Art. And I've talked about this scene. He's got a line here. I won't spoil everything from the movie, but Art's an older character and he's looking out on all of these trees and he says, "Beautiful, ain't it? All of it." And these are trees that he's been around for his whole life. And it was a moment where for me watching the scene, it made me reflect on, like, how often do I go out and just rest and take a hike or reflect on the world the Lord has made? I mean, I'm not someone that's like outdoorsy in any ways. I'm a
Sure.
guy that, and I work from home. I spend most of my time indoors, and so that has, in some ways, made me go, man, how often do I just sit outside and go, look at what God has made. Look at the sky. Look at the stars. Look at the trees.
So it took you to this place where you were reminded about the things that you normally take for granted?
Yeah, in a way. Yeah.
And that's where movies kind of shine beautifully, right?
Right.
And also point back to the creator of them. There's a way that film seems to kind of bypass our defenses and speak to our soul if it's good.
Yeah.
It kind of goes beyond the normal, I don't know, telling a good story in general, I think, does that, though.
I think so. You get those emotional scenes in movies a lot of times that just speak, like, that just hit you.
Yeah.
They hit you hard sometimes when you're sitting there and you're like, am I about to cry right now at this scene that's about to happen? Like, what's going on here, right?
That's right.
Am I about to cry at this character in this movie that is not real? This character is not a real person. I know that, but it's something that just, it hits you in that scene when you watch a character either die or you watch a character struggling with something. There are movies that do that. They just make you emotional.
Something I love about your podcast is that you kind of point people to think about what you're thinking about. This is an important thing that we don't do very often. We kind of take in uncritically, unfiltered, which we're told in Second Corinthians, take every thought captive in obedience to Christ. But we often they just come and go, and we don't stop and go, what is it that I'm taking in here? What does it mean? What are these things I'm feeling? Why is it that I'm feeling this? It really what didn't stand out to me until I heard someone talk about the Lion King and how when Nala, I think is the name of the girl lion, comes back and fights with Simba when they first find each other as adults after Simba's ran away from home, and they fight each other, and he pushes her back and she falls and she makes these eyes at him. And someone was talking about how the animators really nailed that because we all know what that look means. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the person who said it goes, and all of you just accept it like animals actually do this. And I had never thought about the fact, like, we're watching animals. Yeah. We're watching lions and elephants, and when they make faces, we totally accept it because we just go, oh yeah, I know what that means. Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute, they don't really do that. And you're just going, oh, but I know that.
Yeah.
And so there's something about the depiction of real things in film, even if it's from fictitious characters or animals or whatever, that there's something still universally understood about, oh, I know what that face means. Whether you're drawing it on a lion or a human or a puppet or an alien, we all know what that means. What is that? I mean, there's something to that.
Right. I think we're emotional people, right? And we're people that understand emotions, and we're people that, like you said, we take our thoughts captive to Christ. So when we're thinking on these scenes, when we're watching these scenes, we understand certain gestures and certain thoughts, even when
we just accept them, even though they're not from another human.
Yeah.
Which is how universal, I guess, emotions are.
Right. I think that speaks to like the fact that, like, yeah, everybody deals with emotions. Everybody understands what's happening in that scene that you're talking about. Like, not just Christians, like unbelievers understand that. Mm-hmm. So we're able to go, yeah, we know what's going on there. Like, everybody can watch that scene and go, okay, we understand this. And so I think it's a universal thing. That's how we were molded by a creator.
It comes back to being created in the image of God.
Right.
I want to move into kind of this idea of identity, sin, and the heart. How do you think that the movies we watch or the things that we're attracted to watching kind of reveal what we love or fear, long for? Kind of, what do the movies we watch say about us is kind of the heart of what I'm asking. But I know that, like, you, for instance, you love the movie Train Dreams. I like it, right? Something about it spoke to you. There was something about this that kind of drew something out of you. You've really, like, there was something. So the films we watch have something to do with what we really truly love, what we fear, what we long for. What is that? What do you think that is that we're seeing there in film when we are drawn to a film?
Yeah, I think for some people, at least in the longing aspect, it could be a longing for a part of life that maybe they haven't experienced yet. And in some ways, so not specifically in that film, because the film is a sad film in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I was not properly warned, that's for sure.
And but the beginning of the film, there is a longing in some ways for children, for me. And so there is an aspect to that of like, man, I long for the day when my wife and I will have children. And in the fear aspect, people have this fear of the unknown, fear of different situations. And so they go and they watch a movie that deals with those fear of the unknowns, fear of fill in the blank, whatever may be happening in the movie. And it's happening in a movie. So they go into the movie with the mindset of, this is a movie, I can sit down and watch this movie, and as long as it's not based off a real story, I know that this is fictitious, this is not going to happen, and so I can sit here on the edge of my seat and watch this and be like, oh, this is good. This is a good movie. Like, I can enjoy this. Like, this fear of what's happening without the experience that comes with it, in a way, of actually having to experience it.
Yeah.
You're not actually going through it. You're watching someone on a screen go through it.
This is kind of what, that's really good. That's kind of what C.S. Lewis was talking about in his book On Stories, when he says that it's better for a child to watch a fantasy or engage in fairy tale and learn a lesson about being brave before he actually has to be brave in real life.
Right. It's better for them to deal with the monster in the closet.
Right.
Than, I think he says, than the
actual burglar.
The actual burglar breaking into the house.
Yes.
In a way.
So many people that are seeking to better themselves are told, not to spend so much time in front of the television. So that means that when we do spend time in front of the television, it's strategic, right? It's intentional. What would you say? Because you watch a lot of things, and you watch a lot of things because you're discerning in those things. You're picking apart the worldview. Everybody listening is not going to be able to pick apart the worldview of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about how to decide what to watch, besides listening to your podcast and getting an approved movie that you've already seen. How would a person listening to this try to make a good decision about what to spend their time on? And then the second part of that question is, if they have a category for how to pick a movie or a film or a TV show to watch, like what are they looking for type of thing, what would you say that they could be doing while they're engaging in that wouldn't be like laborious and difficult and annoying, that they had to pick it apart and analyze everything, but that would still be good for their soul?
Yeah, so I guess for the first part, finding something to watch, I guess that goes back to like, what do you enjoy? Like that'd be one of the first things I ask somebody is, what do you enjoy watching? Do you enjoy comedies? Do you enjoy adventure? Do you enjoy action? Because that's going to be my starting place. Because if you don't enjoy a comedy movie, don't sit down and watch a comedy movie. Like, what are you doing? So it's going to be like, what genre do you enjoy? After you've kind of identified that, maybe you don't know what genre you enjoy. Well, let's try a few things out. But after you have figured out, like, hey, this is the genre that I do enjoy overall, or maybe you enjoy a few different genres, it's finding the right idea behind why you're watching that movie. But secondly, I guess to answer that second part there, like identifying in that other area, I think was kind of the second part of that question there.
Yeah, what to watch, and then also like how can you enjoy it and be discerning without it being like a whole process? Because some people don't want to do work; they just want to, escape.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be work. Not every movie. Now I do this a lot. because I do a podcast, I pause the movie a lot to write down my thoughts. And
No, you are annoying to watch a movie with.
it's bad. Get me in a movie theater though. I can't pause the movie though. So
There you go.
that's the good thing. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to write down your thoughts. But it really is kind of setting aside time to say, hey, I am going to be intentional about this time. If I'm going to be watching a movie or I'm going to be watching a TV show, now I don't pause TV shows to write down my thoughts. Hey, I'm not going to be playing games on my phone. I'm not going to be doing something else. I'm going to be sitting here on the couch watching this show. And
You don't play on your phone while you're watching a TV show?
I have occasionally. I won't lie. I've done it before.
Thank you.
So I'm not going to sit here and be like, I don't do that. I do that.
Do you but you're recommending not though. You're basically saying that's to try to fully engage.
I would say try to fully engage as much as possible, because it helps you kind of see what all is happening here. Because you can tell exactly who the characters are. You might miss a really good line from a character where you think on what's happening. I think of, for example, like the Daredevil TV show, Netflix series, the new one they're doing now, where there's been some really good lines where you think on like, ooh, that was a line that caught me, that I had to think on like, is he right in what he's saying? Is he wrong in what he's saying? And then afterwards I could go and go, why did that catch me off guard? And what's going on here? Why is that character struggling with that? And so there are just different shows or different movies where, sitting there and trying to engage it fully helps you make sure that you're identifying the characters as best as you can and the lines as best you can.
I will say from the counseling room that is an important aspect of consuming entertainment that can actually be useful for you in other areas of life, which is disciplining yourself to just do one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're in an age of constant noise, and be still and know that I am God. We read in Scripture, and there is a TikTok culture of just doom scrolling, and that even takes up our time of sitting together. We have a show on, and we'll doom scroll, and it's like we wonder why we're anxious and depressed and frustrated, and don't know what's going on with us. And it's like, if you could discipline yourself, learn to discipline yourself and do one thing at a time in that small way, it actually help you in other areas of your life as well. So that's a really good tip.
Yeah, I think it's especially helpful when talking to other people, because you can take that away from that, and instead of being on your phones all the time or like you said, multitasking, you're really engaged with other people in conversation. You have those instances where you're in the middle of a conversation with somebody and they take out their phone because they don't know what to do with their hands. And it's like, am I boring you?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, is this a boring conversation?
Is this a boring conversation?
And it's like, no, they don't know what to do with their hands, because we're in a, like you said, a TikTok culture, they have to be multitasking. And so being able to discipline yourself enough to go, okay, I'm going to stop being multifaceted in all aspects and go, I'm focused in this one area. If you can do that while watching a movie, you can start doing that in so many other areas, and it'll really make a difference.
That's good. That's helpful. Um, my next question for you is how can Christians grow in discernment without becoming overly critical or disengage from culture? Because we grew up with two types of people. The type that said, no movies, no video games, no Harry Potter, we're out, we're Christians, we're separate from the world. And then there was, those people made it seem like everybody else was against them and everybody else was just full of debauchery. But then there's a group of discerning people that are trying to engage appropriately with the culture, even in the area of um, art and movies and things like that. And so, talk about that for a minute. How can Christians grow in discernment without becoming overly critical?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, uh, we talk about being in the world, but not of the world in a lot of ways. And so if you're going to engage with the world, I think you need to know what the world loves to engage with. And that doesn't mean that you have to enjoy everything that they enjoy and you have to go and watch everything that they watch. Because the world loves to watch some terrible things. That is true. They love to go watch some awful movies. That is 100% true. And there are some movies that I will not cover on my podcast or I will not go watch because I do not enjoy them. I've mentioned that to you. There are some horror movies that I will not cover on the podcast because I do not enjoy horror movies because I think they deal with a realm that I do not want to deal with. I do not want to go into that spiritual dark realm of
Yeah,
movies.
sure.
But the world loves those movies. So that's just kind of a side note there. But there is a, I would say there is a part of the Christian culture or a part of some Christian aspects where they would say, we just don't engage with any movies or TV shows at all. And for me, I grew up in a household that went to the movie theater. My parents loved movies. I loved going to the movies. My first job was at the movies. And I got to engage with so many people at the movie theater that weren't believers. And like I said earlier, you get to have so many interesting conversations, though. And they're an avenue for meeting people and getting to have potentially at some point gospel conversation, which was really cool. And so there is a sector of, I would say, some Christians that would say that are overcritical in that area of, hey, we just can't watch movies at all. All movies are bad. And I would disagree because I think just from my experience with them and my opportunity that I've had to engage with people through the movies, there's an opportunity to, like I said, engage with the culture and engage with the world through those. And there's a way to do it well, and I would say there's a way to do it not so well as well. So you have to go about it the right way, and you have to be discerning. And I think, like you said, you don't want to be overcritical. When it comes to that, you don't want to be the world's worst critic in a lot of ways, because nobody enjoys being around the world's worst critic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to be someone that can be an open mind of, hey, why did you enjoy that movie? Why did you go see that movie? Like what sparked your interest for that movie in particular? Or why did you read that book? Or why do you listen to that music? why is that your favorite artist, right? Like you think through those thoughts and they help create really good conversation.
Earlier, when you said I would start with what interests you, I think that people can hear that and kind of tune out, like, well, duh. But that's kind of one of the beauties of the things that you do, is that you are unafraid to engage with people about what they're actually interested in. It's one of your strengths. It's one of the strengths of the podcast. And that is to go, well, why do you like that? That's such a simple thing that's profound that people miss. Is we're often thinking in categories of black and white, right and wrong. And before we go there, just simply going, well, why do you do that? Why do you like that? Well, what do you like about that? Is such a heart probing question, because it's about more than what happened. It's about why it happened, or what part you liked, what you took from it, which actually is really rich conversation,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to simply um, kind of the status of having seen something, if you will.
Right.
You know, what we watch and engage in kind of becomes part of our identity in a lot of ways. And at least we attach our identity to it. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not our identity as much as we attach identity to it. Have you seen the latest movie? Have you read this? You know, we kind of attach this to our identity. And as people who are supposed to identify with Christ, I think it's a very helpful thing to say to someone, well, why did you like that? You know, it's a very simple thing, but it's very helpful. You're very good at that. I've seen you in the wild, and you're very good at that with people of listening and being open to not just immediately condemn, but to or criticize, but to be like, tell me about it. Let's talk about it. That attitude of wanting to discuss things is something that we can't miss as believers, that really makes people endeared to Christians, who are not just simply condemning them to hell for what they've seen or what they've done, but rather have a heart to understand them for the sake of guiding and discipling.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, I've seen all of the best movies in the world and I've never seen a bad movie. Right? That would be wrong for me to do that.
Right.
And so for me to go into it and go, why'd you go see that movie? Or like, why did that movie interest you? I'm not asking that in a way that's going to go, I'm about to judge you so hard for going to see that movie. No, I'm just asking that question to go, why did that movie interest you in particular? Because I want to know, like, what in particular about that movie seemed to engage with you to where you wanted to go spend 2 hours in a movie theater. You wanted to spend money on a ticket. You wanted to spend money most likely on concessions, and you wanted to sit there for 2 hours. Right? We talked about time earlier. If we're spending so many hours sitting at a movie theater, you got to drive to the movie theater. You spend hours, you spend time sitting there. And so it's like, not only for the movie, you got, man, don't get me started on how many commercials and advertisements they got before the movie.
That's
now.
Exactly right.
And so
And you're
there
bringing up
for
a good point.
while.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why did that movie interest you? Because I'm very specific on what movies I go to sit in the movie theater to watch now. And that's not because I'm like picky on what movies I watch. I love going to the movie theater, but it's because it takes time to go and sit there now. And I'm very discerning on what I'm going to go see.
All these things you're talking about can be summarized in this concept that, and it's a terrifying concept, but everything we do matters. Do all things to the glory of God, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea that even the entertainment we take in is part of what's influencing us. It's part of what's sending us a message. And if we're undiscerning about it and we do it haphazardly without thinking about it, without taking those thoughts captive, it's influencing so much about us. It's influencing our expectations of each other and the world. It's influencing what we expect of God and what we expect out of our lives. It influences it shapes the way It shapes our goals. It shapes our intentions. What we fill ourselves with really does that. And if you're taking in a tremendous amount of media undiscerningly, you are being shaped and you are being guided and directed in a way. It's just a matter of which way. And
Right.
so that leads me to this next question. How does the gospel reshape the way we interpret the stories we watch?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The gospel, the good news, right?
Yeah.
Everything we do is to the glory of God when we come to the gospel. When you know the gospel, when you know who Jesus is and what he did for you, uh, that you were a sinner in need of a savior, and that Christ came and died on a cross for your sins and for my sins, and that 3 days later he rose, defeating death. The beauty of the gospel. And so if I truly believe the gospel and that should be shaping every part of my mind, my soul, my body, everything that I do, then sitting there watching a movie, sitting there and taking in any part of the entertainment of the media, I should have that constantly on my mind. Uh, Not just with media, that should always be on my mind. I should always be reminded of that. But especially when I just think on that whenever I'm sitting down to watch a movie and kind of thinking through that concept, because it's so crucial to who I am, right? As a believer, I am I am a follower of a Christ, and so as I sit down to watch a movie and to take in this media, I have to be constantly thinking on how is this movie either pointing me in the direction of the gospel, or like we said, not all the movies are made by Christians, and so they're most likely giving way to a worldview that differs than mine. So I can go and contrast it, what the movie is trying to say with what the true gospel is, to go, hey, this is what I really believe. This is what the movie said. Where did the movie go wrong?
Hmm. Yeah, and if you don't do that contrast, then you can end up believing two things that are contradictory,
Yes,
which is what we often have.
which is a dangerous thing.
For sure. For sure. Okay, last two questions for you. The first is practically. Someone hears this and they go, "Yeah, I am being shaped by the things that I take in. Yes, I do want to be more discerning. Yes, I do want to use film and entertainment and, that kind of thing in a God glorifying way, and then it matters what I'm taking in my heart and soul." Um, where should they start? What would you recommend watching? What would you recommend a person that's listening to this that wants to take it seriously, what they're consuming and what they're being influenced by? Where's a great place to start?
Great place to start. That's a good question. Are you talking movies in specific? Are you talking
Yeah, what's
series
your
in
next recommendation?
specific?
Yeah, movie
Yeah,
specific, show specific, or
I
just
think
principle specific. If you want to just give a general principle for where to look, I mean, it's an open ended question for a reason.
yeah, I think a helpful place or a really unique and easy place to start, is with the Disney classic movies. And the reason I'd start with the Disney classics, we've covered a lot on the podcast. And so if you want a few examples, you can go listen to them. That's not saying you have to go do that. But practically, the classic Disney movies, so classic Disney princess movies or just classic Disney movies in general, they always had a point to why they were made. Now, I think every movie has a point to why it's made. There's a reason they make movies, right? But I think there's a practicality to why the classic Disney movies were made. And there are so many themes that are just easy to pick up on as you're watching those movies. I was talking to someone that, for example, listened to the Beauty and the Beast episode. He said he watched it with his family and he paused the movie 11 times to talk through the movie with his family.
Wow.
And point out just specific things. There are just little things that you can see contrast between characters, or the importance of characters. Why do they do what they do? So I think the Disney classic movies are a great place. If you're not a Disney fan, then I think you can go really watch whatever movie you enjoy watching, within reason, of course, and kind of just start picking the movie apart. See what's going on. Why is this character doing what they're doing? Start asking yourself those questions as you're watching the movie. And that doesn't mean you have to pause the movie. That doesn't mean you have to take notes, but you can start taking mental notes.
Sure.
And it does make a difference.
Sure. Walk away with an impression.
Yeah.
And talk about it with people. Engaging others.
Yeah, I think that's a practical way as well. Just talking to people after you watch a movie. Asking them, like, have you seen this movie? Have you ever thought about why this character did this in the movie? And most of the time, if people have seen the movie, they'll be like, oh, that's a really good question. And you can have some really good conversations around it.
Final question for you. If there's, again, a practical one, is there something about watching movies that people often miss? Is there an element, a practical element, a practical guide that you could leave people with that as they're watching? People often miss this thing about movies that all movies have in it, and they would help them kind of discern. The question is in that line. Feel free to answer it however you want, but what is it that people normally miss?
I think when watching a movie, at least one of the pieces that I love within a movie, sound, pacing, or just a few elements that come to mind. Sound and pacing of the movie. I also just think of background imagery. So there's a lot to that. I think in specific sound, when you think on there's some really good composers out there that have
The score of a movie, like you're talking about the music.
The music made for a movie. They've either made some really good songs that go along with the movie and are in the movie, or the characters are singing. You got a lot of really good musicals out there, or you've got just this background music that's playing, and it's getting louder as the scene's going on, or it's getting softer. And I think that element of the movie makes a difference in how we watch the scene, right? If it's a quiet scene and there's no music, it can be a very tense scene.
Yeah.
Or if the music's getting louder, something's about to happen. You notice those little elements that do make a difference in how a scene plays out. And it either, for some people as they're watching it, can create these anxious feelings, and you're kind of sitting on the edge of your seat. You start sitting up a little bit, or you start getting a little emotional, depending on what's happening in the scene. So I think the sound, the score can really make a difference in how we view some scenes throughout the movies.
Yeah. So you've done a great job here of illustrating how shaping these movies can be, how steering that they can be, and how the things that we engage in influence us, even in ways we might not notice. And that by really actually thinking about what you're thinking about, by looking intentionally even at the entertainment that we take in, we actually are using skills that would be useful in other areas. And so I could lay out a dozen that you've said, or a dozen that you've pointed out that I could name and label in the counseling room. Things like discipline and self-control and focus, and just the ability to do to notice small things that matter and capitalize on them. There's so many elements to this that can be useful, and just recognizing what's influential can then help you be more aware, really outside of watching movies, in relationships and in situational awareness. I mean, there's kind of an emotional intelligent aspect to movie watching if you do it correctly, if you do it the way that you're describing. And so that's absolutely fascinating. I wanted to let people know what you do on your podcast. So your podcast is called Projecting Perspectives, and what Kyle does, I will put a link to it on this podcast so that you can get to his podcast. And what Kyle does is he walks through a movie. You can't. He says it every podcast. You can't get to everything, but scene by scene, as best he can, he walks through a movie over the course of an hour with guests, and then they break down the movie and what the intention is of the scene and the characters and the narrator of the movie, and they kind of make you aware to what's going on while you're walking through it. He does a really, really good job at that. Compliments to you. It's excellent. I love the format. I like the way you do it. And it makes something fascinating because people might be listening to this going, I don't want to watch it. I don't want to listen to a podcast about a movie. Why would I ever do that? I've had people say it to me, and I go, why don't you take a listen? And they go listen. And like, hey, that was actually pretty entertaining. And I'm like, I know. I'm telling you to go check it out. It's actually really helpful because it's not just listening to a podcast about a movie. It's learning how to think. It's learning how to be discerning and learning how to analyze the things that we take in. And so I really appreciate what you do. And I appreciate you coming on here and talking about the shaping influences of the things around us, because that's what this podcast is about, is kind of trying to be intentional with our lives. And entertainment is one of those areas. So I appreciate you.
I appreciate it. I mean, you've come on my podcast more than I can count. So it's an honor to be on your podcast. That's for sure.
Well, I enjoy coming on your podcast and analyzing things because I'm doing it anyway. I might as well talk to somebody about it.
That's right.
So you've given me an outlet.
It's a good time.
Yeah, that's right. I appreciate that. All right. Well, if you are listening, then make sure that if you heard something you like, that you share this with a friend, and that you like and subscribe to the podcast so that we can beat the algorithm. Kyle and I both know about the algorithm. Facebook holds us back. It wants lots of money from us. So we want you to like, subscribe, share all the stuff, all the things, just to help us reach more people. They will hear the gospel both here and on Kyle's podcast, because we want to regularly make that obvious to people. And so if you have enjoyed the conversation, make sure to do that for us, and we will see you next time on Forum, a Counseling Podcast. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.